afternoon. Welcome to the 2026 AAAS annual meeting Sci-Mic stage, supported by the George Washington University. This is being streamed online and also being presented in person here at Phoenix. We are on the last interview, the last interview I will be conducting this afternoon. So let's jump in with Akerlof, an associate professor at George Mason University's Department of Environmental Science and Policy. Welcome to the Sci-Mic stage.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is fantastic.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I'm interested in how we can bring together researchers, policymakers, and the public to make better societal decisions and also create a future that's based not only on understanding of the challenges that we face, but also our shared values. So the way I interpret this is actually communication plays a key role in bringing all these folks together and figuring out where we want to go. And as a result, that's what I focus on. So as a social scientist, which is my area of practice, I'm really interested in focusing on developing actionable knowledge. So I'm trying to figure out what are the ways that we can design and build more relational, organizational structures that will facilitate this communication between the scientific community, the public, and government, and hopefully lead us to, new and brighter horizons.
That sounds great. You have a workshop tomorrow, correct?
Right.
Can you give us a preview of what you'll be discussing there?
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, so you guys can see the slide up. This is so our workshop is going to be tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. It's going to be in the Convention Center in room West 101A, I believe. And as you can see, we are going to be talking about how can we train researchers to communicate with policymakers. And we've got a pretty, let's see if I can get the tech to work. There we go. We've got 6 folks who are going to be leading these training who have a vast array of expertise and also international representation. So we've got folks coming from universities, from scientific organizations, including, you can see, Aaron Heath, AAAS, and also nonprofits, like T'Pring is from National Science Policy Network, Henriette Canino is from CCST, and all of these folks are also coming from different parts of the globe. So we've got folks from the United States, we've got folks coming from the United Kingdom, as well as who've run training in Germany and Spain. So which is a little bit unique, is in the breadth of focus. And what we're going to be talking about is that in conjunction with the forthcoming open access textbook on communicating science for policy, we've developed a set of materials. We actually ran training sessions this past summer and we tested them. And so the training package is available free. You can go and go to our website, which, whoops, any minute there. Okay, it's thinking about it. So you can download the package on the website that's listed at the bottom. We've got checklist, workbook, we've got scenario, and all of this is open and for people to use. And so what we're going to be doing in this session is we're going to be telling people about, what the materials are, where they can find it, and also kind of the backbone. How are we thinking about the content? How did we put it together? What are the learning outcomes? And then we're gonna spend half of the session actually in discussion groups trying to understand what are the types of training needs that the folks in the session have. So for example, like, are you coming from a university? You're gonna be delivering this with students. Are you delivering this with the student organizations? We've got student organizations all over the country right now. Are you a scientific and professional organization like AAAS, right? Who might want to deliver this type of training? What needs do you have? Or are you coming from another country, another region of the world? And we are actually working right now with people in different places across the globe to translate the materials and also help them adapt them. So we're going to have tables for everybody to sit down, and we'll spend at least 20 minutes plus 30 minutes discussing how can these materials help you, how can you adapt them to make them fit. So really hope, look forward, if anybody's interested, love to have you join the conversation.
I'm a personal big advocate of checklists, so I love seeing that up there. Even though checklists excite me, I wanted to ask what excites you about the work that you do.
Yeah, so I mean, I think probably a lot of people, I suspect, have policy interests in the room. I know there are a lot of people here at AAAS this week who do. And so I think one thing that we've been seeing is this explosion of interest among researchers, especially early career researchers, in thinking about engagement in policy as a key aspect of their own careers, and also seeing it as a huge priority for the scientific community at large. And so I think that's a really, and I think we are definitely seeing that in the discussions here at the conference. And I think that really is an exciting change. And one that I think has a lot of promise for, again, some of the discussions we were having, say at the presidents and, discussions of where does the scientific community go next, right? And I think we may be seeing change in how we do research more with and for society, right? And end up with larger societal impacts and better communications of what those societal impacts are as a result of these shifts.
And more interdisciplinary work too, right?
Right, exactly.
And you mentioned early career scientists. We have a lot of students who are attending this conference.
Right.
What would you say to someone aspiring to join or your field of work or do something similar to what you do now?
Right. I mean, I think one of the really it's both hard and kind of cool, is that people who work at the science policy interface, there is not one path. And so you ask a different person, and I see some of folks in the audience, and you get a completely different answer, how they got to kind of a similar role, which is really neat, but it's also a little scary for people who want to do it. Like, wait, what? How do I do this? So one thing I think is generally helpful is that you talked about transdisciplinarity.
Yes.
Right? And so I think if actually you view your path is it's going to be somewhat meandering, and that you take the opportunities to work, say, for example, take a government position, to work with NGOs, to work with community organizations, to be in a university, that actually understanding those different cultures, how they create knowledge, what are barriers to their using evidence for decision making can be helpful then as you find a path. And I will say for myself, so I was a Congressional Science and Engineering Fellow through American Geophysical Union. I spent a year in the Senate. And I will say for me, that was a very transformative learning experience. And so went back to university. But I will say, I've worked in a wide variety of other organizations. And having those experiences working with, again, people of a lot of different types of knowledge that they're bringing to the table, a lot of different experiences, and a lot of different knowledge needs helps me, at least I find, be able to work then in transdisciplinary teams.
You sort of answered the next question that I was going to ask you. No, which was, when did you first realize you wanted to pursue the line of work that you're doing now? So is there anything you would like to add to what you've said?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I will say, I mean, I've realized increasingly that I was kind of interested in the same stuff for a very long time. I actually worked briefly in media a long time ago, and I was always interested in science. I was pre-med at one point, and then those things all just kind of came together, like science and communication, and I was very much interested in politics, and yeah.
Right.
So that's it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that fit that.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. No, I
probably you as well.
There's been a lot of conversation about mix matching, like career paths, and that's been the case for me as well. So it's been fun to hear everyone's different paths and experiences. I think it's great to hear that, to know that, oh, if your path is a little bit different, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's work for people.
Meandering can actually be quite good. You learn a lot.
Oh, meandering can be yeah. I love that. I did want to ask, what skill has been most important to your success that people might not expect?
That's a hard question. I think some of the things that you end up doing, like if you're working with people, as a social scientist, I work with people. So important things are actually you need to feed them. By the way, this is one thing that comes up with federal funding all the time. It gets hard to feed people. But that actually, right, as a social scientist, just your relationships with people are really important. And so a lot of that ends up being, it's relationship building, which people always talk about in the science policy world. But as a researcher and a social scientist, it's also really critical that that you can do the work of building relationships with organizations and then with individuals as you're trying to understand what are the problems they're facing, what are their concerns, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the relationship building, that's a great answer. Before we pivot on to the final part of the interview, I wanted to ask about advice. Has there been any advice that you've received that has stayed with you as you've done your work?
I will say, I do repeat this one, and actually, this one came from somebody we jointly know from George Mason University.
Yes.
But I mean, in terms of communication, and I don't always do this perfectly, and yes, if you come on to our session on Saturday, yeah, you can critique. But tell people 3 times, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then summarize what you tell them. And I do try and do that, and I must admit, I do repeat it to students when they're doing like their dissertation presentations or proposals, like, hey, can you help people frame this so they can understand what it is, right? And then it helps them think through the material. So I will say that.
Yeah, that phrase is very familiar to me as a George Mason grad student in the Department of Communication. I wanted to pivot now to the final part of the interview. I've been asking interviewees a little bit about either their hobbies or what they're reading. So I wanted to ask you, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, so I've been reading I just actually picked it back up again.
Nice.
In COVID's wake, How Our Politics Failed Us. Anybody else? I see some nodding heads has seen that book. So it's by Francis Lee and Stephen Macedon, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. They're both political scientists at Princeton University. And they basically, it came out relatively recently, like spring 2025. The book is essentially a critique of our response to the COVID pandemic. And in it, they talk about different aspects of it, including the response of the scientific community and what was the role of expert advice. And I think we, in our training package up there, actually for the US training, we had 2 different case studies, and both of them actually focused on COVID-19 decision making. And so I think it's not everybody wants to go back and think about COVID at this point, and it's not totally gone either. But I think it's actually really critical for us to think about what were the successes, and there were a lot of successes, right? But also, where were the areas which we actually might have wanted to do that differently as we think about moving forward ahead. And I also think, unfortunately, and I think this is also what the book gets at, is that some of those things that we did that were not the greatest in terms of decision making have also lingered in terms of the effects on the scientific community and its perception at this point. And so I think it's, as much as we may pain us to think about that, so I'm not saying I'm enjoying that aspect of the book.
I understand.
But I think it's a really important one, and it's one important if you're interested in engaging in policy, and let's learn from what we did and how we can do this better. Because, right, we're gonna see another pandemic, we're gonna see another crisis. We wanna do it better than the last time.
Exactly. Are there any final thoughts that you would like to leave listeners here in Phoenix or those who are listening in online?
Yeah, I would just say I've been really excited how much AAAS has been a focus for people who are interested in engaging in policy and at sort of that nexus between science and policy. So if you're somebody in the audience who that's not, where you haven't, this is new to you, there are a ton of sessions. In fact, there are so many sessions that it's hard to, they're backed up. But I really encourage you to check out a session from Section Y, Section X, or just generally look and search on science policy, because there are some really cool people who are doing amazing work sitting in the audience here as well. Is this something you're thinking about? Like, hey, maybe this is an aspect of my research career, or hey, this might be something as a career I want to do. Lots of people here who can help you out and kind of help you shepherd through that path.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the SciMic stage. I've really appreciated this conversation. Thank you.
Oh, George Mason University.
Yeah. This is all from me today.